Hey, another Stonebank song to start off the year. I sure hope the following year doesn't break the streak or anything. Remember what I said last year about there being a ton of weird collabs that were actually really good? Same thing applies to this year. The artwork for this made it impossible for me not to immediately think of the Triforce when I hear this song. Laura Brem, no further questions. Weirdly enough, I always thought this was just a Rootkit side project. This was Resonate's first step into his more R&B style that I personally wasn't a huge fan of. If you don't have this as your ringtone, then you're just not living life correctly. You know, for a Taupy Monstercat debut, this ain't half bad. With that in mind though, who's ready to go through the other 20 Pink Cloud remixes with me? Buckle up, cause this might take a minute. A very straightforward version of the original, but I don't mind it. This didn't deserve the hate that it got. There are far worse songs on the label than this. I've never seen a more uncomfortable spelling of the word fresh in my life. It's not bad, but it's very much a trap song made in 2016 if you catch my drift. If there's one thing about Rogue that I think gets completely overlooked, it's how much effort he tends to put in his remixes. And even though this isn't a masterpiece or anything, the fact that he performed his own version of the emoji vocals makes it that much better. This remix is so criminally overlooked, it's actually insane this never got the main channel upload. Why has society made me turn away from the word daddy? Takes the original and gives it more of a cutesy, playful vibe. I don't know. Another remix that got some hate, but I also don't mind this one, especially since we just got a whole ass EP from the dude not that long ago. On Monstercat, nonetheless. Alex, I'll take, hey look, it's Terra Vita on Monstercat for 500. I can almost see the esports team entering the stage while this plays. A house remix of the song actually wasn't a bad idea, albeit slightly outdated by today's standards. Not bad for 2016 Electro House. Kinda reminds me of Astronaut in some areas. Not the strongest remix on the comp for sure, but we'll see Miyu work with the Pegboard Nerds themselves for a song we'll get to later in the video. Looking back on this remix, this feels weird to listen to for some reason. I can't put my finger on it exactly, but it just feels awkward to listen to. It's a very odd remix when you first hear it, but I think it works better on repeat listens. Very commercial house, but not bad I suppose. In Bear Grylls' defense, I actually think his style fits the song very well. As the remix to cap off this remix package, this was actually a pretty fire remix of the original, which in and of itself is a remix of the original. Okay, let's talk about some original songs again before I lose my mind. The title track to Puppet's first Monstercat EP, and if you want a song that basically sums up his style from this era, this is it. Not my favorite Pilot song, but still a banger. The debut of legendary household name Conroe, and a solid debut at that. 35 seconds in always scares the fuck out of me. You know, for a 4-minute ambient piece, it's, well, exactly that. A lot of Puppet's music can be described as euphoric, but this takes it to another level. What a fucking banger. Haywyre just doesn't miss. The original, but with some generic future bass. I wonder if people still know about Zan Griffin in 2025. The original but Stonebank. The original but Trap. The original but Electro House. It's interesting. I'll give it that at least. Epic intro. I couldn't think of a better release single for this album. Absence is the absence of presence. Presence is the absence of absence. It's a shame we never got more Haywyre dubstep on the label. I mean, not that there's not the possibility of it happening nowadays. Not a popular song from this album, but hella groovy. You really get the funk with this one. A beautiful piano piece dedicated to his late grandfather. Look, I hate to say it, but the Hyper Potions remix still clears. Once you realize that Hush's song titles are all in Dutch, they make a bit more sense. A bit. A solid second single to Tut Tut Child's Monstercat album that we'll get to in a moment. One of their most underrated songs, and I will die on that hill. It was also a free Valentine's Day release, so that's something. The song where Mr. Fijuiji famously commented, "Yeah, it's good." This song single-handedly increased every Monstercat fan's hood credibility. Hellbird continuing his goated streak. The song that truly began the Tristan we know and love today. Having an album inspired by Alice in Wonderland might be one of the strangest album concepts I think we've ever had on the label, and yet it just works. Don't lie, the time signature threw you off, admit it. Whoa, ho, hey man, at least take me to dinner first. God, this vocal's catchy as fuck. This song feels like the break room in Super Smash Bros. Brawl's All-Star mode, and I know that sounds super specific, but just trust me on this one. Honestly, one of the most underrated vocalists to ever grace the label. She's been on 3 original Monstercat releases, and we've now covered 2 of them. Immaculate vibes throughout, and also one of my favorite Danica Nadeau performances. This one reminds me of that older Tut Tut Child sound that I never really was into that much. The fact that this album ends on potentially my favorite Tut Tut Child song ever is just a big red cherry on top. One of the few songs from this year of Monstercat that I truly loved. Older San Holo stuff has always been kind of hit or miss for me, but this one's the most in-between out of all of them. As the release upload for Karma Field's New Age Dark Age LP, this bangs. Not many Karma Field songs I would call euphoric, but this is absolutely one of them for sure. Say what you want about this album, this has some of the most creative production of any Monstercat record to this very day. I think this is where ASMR kinks were born. This one's always been a favorite of mine, despite how repetitive it can be sometimes. These drops are just evil. Truth be told, I always thought this was a weak ending to the album. It's the original, but with a few extra lines added from Curly, but that's literally it. I love Noisestorm, but this was one of the few singles from him where I was just... World and Color Drive was honestly a match made in heaven. One of the most underrated World songs to ever exist. Safe to say 2016 had a lot of experimental releases. It's apparent to me that San Holo music videos loved using flashing lights because I guess at some point they made the video more watchable. I always think this song isn't as popular as it actually is. I try not to associate their name with Superman, you know, the actual character, until I remember this is their logo. I still don't understand, to this day, how we didn't get more than one song from these three. My personal favorite of Milano's Monstercat releases. Unlike Pluto's Monstercat debut, and also the first in somewhat of a trilogy of songs. Unfortunately, this would be the last time we'd see Pixel on the label, and in my case specifically, this send-off never really quite clicked with me. I'll say this about Hush, their music was typically really satisfying to listen to. The fact that we never saw this combo again after this song is just criminal behavior. On the exact opposite note, if you think we're running out of Stonebank and ML anytime soon, you are sorely mistaken. I always thought this one was pretty underrated. A little weird on first listen, but still underrated. A lot of people know Protostar for his DMB nowadays, but this was the first time we even got to see that potential. This is the only song on this EP where the title means exactly what you think it means. Vonk. Basically just the instrumental of the song from earlier. Out of all the Conroe songs you'll ever hear in your lifetime, this one has probably aged the worst. This song has been my message ringtone for nearly 9 years and I don't regret it in the slightest. Still one of my favorite Trivecta songs to this very day. As someone who used the Novation Launchpad app when I was a kid, recognizing some of these samples blew my 14-year-old mind. The original but trap/electro house. After seeing a comment about this song, I can't help but hear Steven walking in these drops. This is the most non-Pegboard Nerds song I think I've heard. I mean, it technically is, but since it's a remix, it's not exactly theirs, but whatever, you get what I mean. A name that the Nerds would go on to collaborate with quite a few times, which is nice because Quiet Disorder solo material just never did it for me. I'm sorry, but this clears all the remixes. Maybe even the original, depending on the day. The debut of Slushy on Monstercat, and honestly, I don't mind it. Yes! Probably their most forgettable song on Monstercat, but not a bad one in my opinion. God, a VIP of this would go so hard. Added this to the list of songs everyone else loved but never clicked with me. Easily his most popular song, and understandably so. I have to wonder how he comes up with these song names. I know I've mentioned underrated combos a lot this episode, but like, come on. Definitely one of Varian's more atmospheric pieces on the label. This introduction track to his F Minor Factory EP was honestly one of my favorite things about it. Face-splitting, bass-driven gunfire. It's a classic in his discography for a reason. I always appreciate an artist that tries new things, but Stonebank Trap was never my favorite look on him. To this day, I never understood why this blew up as much as it did. The most popular, well-known song in Monstercat history. The music video is the most viewed video on their YouTube channel, and it's not even close. As well as the song that basically catapulted Marshmello's mainstream career into what it is today, I'm almost certain that even if you've never heard of Monstercat before, you've heard this at some point in your life. It's insurmountably insane how big it became. I know I just introduced him in this episode, but this would be the last time we'd see Milano on the label, and I mean, at least he went out with a banger. Listen, the police don't need to know what I'm thinking. Shit is way too crowded up there and not ready for human consumption. If you liked songs like Let Me Out or Out on a Limb, then you'll fuck with this like I do. Kinda reminds me of his older sound. Well, older than this, I should say. I love the mood of this song, and the way the piano hits every time you hear, "We can save," gets me every time. It's cool and all, but man, that lead is goofy as hell. I love this song, but it kinda sucks that this was one of the last things we got from Hyper Potions before they kinda just disappeared from the label. As for Nitro Fun, he kept releasing stuff, but with releases very few and far between. Alright, chill out bro, you ain't Jesus. Get those pitchforks ready, cause I never cared for this song that much. According to the 10 Commandments, this is not how you end a Monstercat comp. Everything about the song should make me like it, but I just never end up returning to it for God knows what reason. These drops just feel so weird to me when you have context for the rest of the song. I'm not gonna lie, for about a few months since the song came out, I thought her name was America, the scientifically correct term for balls. Topi's Monstercat debut. Most Monstercat fans know him now for the Have collab as well as his most recent Monstercat single, but if you want to hear some of his older material, then I highly suggest the handful of Monstercat singles he had between 2016 and 2017. Some of his most iconic work, to be honest. Out of all the dubstep PBN songs, this one's certainly the most. This one doesn't get talked about enough. Like I said earlier, I appreciate him trying new things at least. Also one of the biggest songs on Monstercat, just not quite on the level of Alone. If there's a trend you'll be picking up for me today, it's that I don't click with a ton of 2016 releases. This one included. The fact that this is one of the very last times we would see the proper stars layout on the channel still makes me sad to this day. If only 14-year-old me knew what was coming next. Kicking off the 5-year anniversary compilation, I remember hearing the original version of this without the vocal way before it was released, but having Aaron Richards step in was just a brilliant choice and he killed it on the track. Stonebang Trance? Let's fucking go. Oh hey look, it's a pegboard, cause get it? You know, Pegboard Nerds, it's in the name. Name me a better song for doing Division. You just can't. We went from this dude smacking us with pots and pans to the gentle noise of glass. How far we've come. This was a nice fresh of breath air after Antihero. When the first thing you hear are Discord sound effects, you know you're in for a treat. How the fuck did you get this to work? Milk's voice has such a range on the song, I thought they just forgot how to spell Miss Trouble. I mean, come on, it's Tristram. You can't have a proper anniversary comp without a Tristram song. And for the sake of the statement, I'm pretending like the 8, 9, and 10-year anniversary comps don't exist. Where the fuck are my stars? Hearing this debut, knowing what he does in the future is surprisingly jarring. Immaculate vibes all around, and also co-produced by Fool, believe it or not. The original but future bass. Seriously, how does he come up with these names? Ah, I see we have a heavy case of Goldfinger. I would get that checked out if I were you. Peak and Evo and you can't convince me otherwise. Is it bad that I immediately think of DC Ranks and not the song? The song called Faces features a head without a face. Fucking generational. It's hard to hear the song and not go, who's got your love, got your love, got your love. That title is such a mood, especially with this song playing. The original, but it's future bass. I mean, what more can I say? Given the original's emotional impact, I'm surprised it didn't really translate here for me. This was the last song we would hear from Resonate on the label, and I hate to make the pun here, but their creativity was a highlight of their talent on Monstercat. Oh, shut it. Given that this was the lead single to their soon-to-release Hollow Mind EP, this never really piqued my interest that much. The end of that trilogy I mentioned earlier. You want to know what I want to know? Well, I feel like I'm the only one that actually likes this song. As a fellow Arizona native, I fuck heavy with Park Avenue stuff. Welcome back, Project 46, even if it's just a few songs for this EP. Somehow Tokyo Machine knew my exact thoughts on the song while making it. Despite my feelings on the overall EP, this title track is easily one of their best songs on the label. As an Arizonan, this song makes me feel like it's snowing outside. Numbers. Kinda gives off Silk vibes if I'm being honest. I still find it hard to believe Eminence made a beat like this in 2016. This remix will never not throw me off. Here's some more of that tropical house I brought up with their song from late 2015. Underrated, but also a perfect ending to this EP. Look, I'll say this, it works better nowadays than it did when it first came out. The original, but even trappier. The original, but now done by 3 people. Congrats on winning the remix contest, but it's a bit much for me. The original, but house. This would be the last time we'd see Lazo on the label until about mid-2018, but at least he gave us this to pass the time. I'm still kind of surprised by the fact that this is the only Snail song on Monstercat. I mean, there's a few remixes that we'll get to in 2017, but other than that, yeah, I adore the production on this. The debut of Coven, who are actually just about to drop their sophomore Monstercat album in like a month from now. This used to be crowned as the horniest song on the label, and yes, I am implying that there has been worse since. Direct has always seemed like kind of the underdog of the entire Monstercat roster, but this might genuinely be one of my favorite songs from him. Never one of my favorites from Rootkit, but still cool. For the release of New Age Dark Age Deluxe, Karma Fields put out these classical versions of certain tracks from the album. Some of them are just piano recreations, and others are just straight up alternate versions of the songs. Thankfully, this is the former. Turning the uplifting and inspiring original into something so cold and isolated is perhaps my favorite thing about this deluxe. This takes the original and makes it epic without ASMR overstimulation. Not my favorite, but very impressive nonetheless. As someone who was born in 2001, I can't relate to this. Given that the song came out the year after Star Wars The Force Awakens was in theaters, I legit thought this was Luke Skywalker on the cover here. Dicks out! This seems like one of those singles that would just get a remix package later down the line. Oh, wait. Dion Timmer's Monstercat debut, and would later go on to release rather consistently up until about 2020. You know, the Mr. Fiji EP from earlier had a direct collab as the release upload, so it only makes sense for Direct's EP to have a Mr. Fiji collab as its release upload. The percussions here are top-notch. Vibey. Super underrated and a perfect ending to the EP. Hey look, it's uppercase Smile. Before the days of lowercase Smile. Easily Subtact's biggest song outside of his Matches remix, which we'll get to in a bit. So I spoke with experts, and I can confirm that is not how you spell want you. Grammatically, it should be Bamfs, but I'll let it slide. Here comes Kuro with one hell of a debut. Guys, these collabs, I swear to God. This song probably has one of my favorite bridge sections in all of Monstercat. What a fucking combo, they both killed it here. To be honest, this could have aged much worse. Not gonna lie, I never was a fan of this pairing. Well, this was not a collab I was expecting. I don't hate it? This is the cutest sounding fight music I've ever heard. And we're back to the pots and pans. I, for one, respect the choice of having a title like Wake Up the House is Underwater and then just... hey. This might be the closest thing we ever get to a Pokemon crossover. Another one of those ones that became pretty big but was never my thing. Also, hi Laura. I don't think I've ever mentioned this, but out of all of the Karma Fields animations we got on the label, I think the video for this one has to be my absolute favorite. I never really cared for either of these remixes. I feel like I'm about to walk into Dracula's castle listening to this. Reminds me a lot of some of the older variant songs like Gunmetal Black or The Scarlet Dawn. It's important to know that this EP was released on Halloween, and if that doesn't tell you what kind of EP this is, then I don't know what will. I always found this one kind of goofy, but like a fun kind of goofy, I guess. A beautiful ending to the EP. And I say that mainly because this is technically the end of the EP, but like, come on. I flipped a minion like a burger. Welcome back, Grant. This time without the bow tie. Richard Caddick under the puppet sound was also a pretty nice treat. I really like the way the song builds. Even though they didn't stay on the label for very long, Drulu's Monstercat releases were pretty damn good. Now this is easily Subtact's biggest song. Outside of the drops themselves, there's actually some surprisingly beautiful string arrangement here. The original but with vocal chops. The original but with a tropical aesthetic. The original but with this funky, almost synthwave vibe to it. The original but just absolutely gorgeous with probably one of my favorite vocal performances on the entire label. No, I didn't stutter. Seven Lions' Monstercat debut, and this was even a couple years before he founded Ophelia Records. I couldn't think of a better track to mark the full release of Coven's Come to Light EP. I wish I liked this more. So, interesting thing about this song is that this actually appears on Gravitz's self-released sophomore album, Things Change. This is the only song from this album that also has been released with Monstercat, and it has boggled my brain ever since. I think I will always prefer Glitch Hop Protostar over D&B Protostar. Partially nostalgia talking, partially I just like Glitch Hop more than D&B. Probably one of Ramesses B's most underrated songs, and this is yet another hill I will die on. Holy shit, this vocal is catchy. Stonebank House, everybody. Never thought you'd see the day? Well, the day happened 8 years ago, so. Despite that intro sounding like a horror movie, everything else about this track is just pure bliss. Both intro tracks to both Puppet EPs this year were simply amazing. I love the atmosphere of this song. Also, rest in peace, Pierce Fulton. There are very few songs I would describe as genuinely bone-chilling on the label, but this is for sure one of those songs. Yes, Tokyo Machine, there are pixels on the screen. Very good. The lead single for their Nerds by Nature EP in 2017, and it's honestly one of their best songs from this era, don't at me. A fucking banger remix, and also Tisoki's Monstercat debut. How far you've come. In my mind, this is probably the most average an Evo song we'll ever got on the label, but it's his most popular song for a reason, I guess. Even if you don't love it, whenever you listen to Hush, you know you're listening to something unique. God, this hurts my brain. In a good way, I promise. I love the kinds of second drops that work best once you've heard the first drop, and this song is that to a T. The fact that one of the last releases of the year was Inverness's debut is actually kind of insane to me. It's also a shame because we won't really get much of him at all until 2020. A bit of an odd final release to cap off the year with, but not a bad remix overall, I guess.